Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Can we get a response? That's much better. I want to keep my talk focused on some fundamentals, and I'll try and zero in on them in a bullet point format. You have had some excellent presentations preceding me already. Point number one, I believe we are sitting in this room, a wonderful audience, in the middle of three big paradoxes. And I have thought about them ever since I came on the dais. Point number one, we are talking about environment and sustainability while sitting in one of the most outstanding halls in the Bombay Stock Exchange. To me, that's paradox number one. I have been a banker. I have been part of an institution that raised mutual funds and asset management in this country. And I can tell you that's one fundamental conflict that you need to embrace upfront. If you want me to make a very romantic, soft, one of those conversations with you where we are just being politically correct, I'm sorry, but I'm going to disappoint you. I believe we need to bite the bullet, right? Corporate objectives and talking about environment and sustainability suffer from an inherent incompatibility. It's a battle. When people talk about, triple bottom line, sounds very, very sexy. When everyone talks about CSR and how to get the profit looking green, it sounds very esoteric. But since a lot of you in the audience are representing the demographic dividend, my first very open submission to you will be that don't live in a fool's paradise. It's a tough one. There are companies that are doing an outstanding job. I believe that. I believe even the government's heart is in the right place, whichever government. But the truth is, it's a massive conflict when the private capital, and I've been part of the private capital industry, I still am, but I do believe one that is driven by shareholder value, market capitalization, and the top line and the bottom line, which is in a P&L report, is never easy for them to actually be as committed as one should be to ensure that our commitment to sustainability is of the highest order. Paradox number one. Paradox number two, just yesterday, an 87-year-old man by the name of G.D. Agarwal, who in Haridwar was fasting for 111 days for the cleaning of the river Ganga, died. He was from an IIT. He was a PhD. And a true environmental activist dies because he said, I want to know what are we doing about removing the pollution from the river Ganga. And I can tell you, there is no outrage anywhere. I don't know whether you are outraged. And I'm being honest. I'm not here to come and, kind of give you some kind of a homily or, a rhetoric. I don't see no outrage anywhere. He probably occupies one column somewhere in a newspaper and will be part of an obscure history within the next 72 hours. God bless you, sir. And even as I talk, and I don't want to comment on what could be right or wrong from the regulatory standpoint, but I have been told that Greenpeace, it's had its bank accounts frozen by the government. To me, these are paradoxes of our times. And I'm not here to, kind of use jargon, I've been part of business school. I know we all use jargons all the time. I think jargons bore me. I want to ask you one question. What do you do? Do you make a difference? Is there a material change that we bring about? If at the end of this 2 days of Club of Rome, there is no material change that is going to happen, it's a waste of our monetary and human resources time. There is far too much of intelligence and experience in this room. If it doesn't make any tangible material change, it's a waste. The same waste management that we talk about, hazardous and computer waste, let's find a waste management for the time we spend here, the electricity we burn, the AC that works, and the wonderful management time that is being invested. Time we bit the bullet, ladies and gentlemen. And therefore my point. The first thing that we need to understand, and I'm very inspired by what I think Mr. Bhatia mentioned, meditation. So look within and ask yourselves, are we first living in a society or are we living in an economy? This is the first battle that civilization needs to look into. We have begun to tell ourselves that we are living in a bubble called an economy. So open your pink papers, get into a confabulation with your colleagues. You can have multiple symposiums you will talk about. You will say GDP, ease of doing business, foreign direct investment. Everyone only talks about the economy as if the economy is preceding society. But environment is about society. Environment, education, health, infant mortality, children getting stunted, animals dying because they drink from polluted rivers are issues of society. Would you agree with me? I don't hear any voices. Yeah, they are. That's a fundamental battle we are talking about. I think Mr. Bhatia mentioned a very pertinent point. If you meditate, you live in the moment. But ladies and gentlemen, our problem is, ironically, we're living in the moment and saying, damn the future generations. This is a great irony of our times. Who cares? I'm also part of a political system. And I think the biggest problem is that ultimately policy is decided by a political system. I think you got some wonderful bureaucrats here. I heard them and I'm from Bihar, and from Bihar all of us were told कि IAS jao, if you don't become an IAS, you might as well go to hell. I never made it because I never sat for it. But truth be said, that you can have the best executioners as assets for society in people like Mr. Bhatia and Mr. Pardeshi. But the political system sets the agenda for change. But the political system only lives from one election to another. And I think that is where you as civil society, as people who are looking at environment, I think make one enormous difference. And if you don't, you need to question it. You need to challenge it. Change doesn't happen by empty speeches. Change happens when you force it. And therefore, my point, look at your HDI index. Forget where you stand on FDI and all that nonsense. Where are you today in the Human Development Index? Where are you on the Inequality Index? And then you'll start getting your answers. I'm here, let me tell you, making a very politically agnostic speech. But I do believe one of the fallacies of our times is that we have got caught up in what I call is the bullet train syndrome. Big is beautiful. Size matters. We are all looking at size. I heard you, sometime back talk, and you come all the way from Bangalore. I don't care for the size of your entity. But I believe for what you're doing, you're probably more meaningful than what some of the largest companies that you worked for. It's not about size. Some of the biggest revolutions have happened because one man or one woman decided to change something. And it could be somebody in the audience who could do it. But we are all so comfortable with the status quo. How many people know that I have read reports that 80,000 trees have been brought down because of the bullet train. And when you read about an accident that happens in Raebareli, just a few days ago, only 7 Indians died, ladies and gentlemen. Only 7 Indians died. Why don't you go and ask those 7 families what it means to them? जाके उनसे पूछिए. जिनके परिवार के 7 सदस्य मर चुके हैं, कि उनके लिए वो रेल दुर्घटना कितना घातक सिद्ध हुआ है. For the rest of us, it is one data, one statistic. I believe as people who are here, interested in circular systems, in upcycling, in waste management, in trying to make our urban and rural lives more sustainable, you need to ponder and make a deep dive here. Where are we ultimately headed? I have been told, and I believe the previous government and this government is making substantive progress on the metro project in Mumbai. If you live through those traffic jams, well, in the long run, perhaps it is worth it. Should it reduce emissions down the line? Yes. But should we not also challenge any institution that says that I need to bring my RA forests? If I can use the word forest, even that is being debated, I assume. that does the RA colony set up for dairy initially, does it need to be actually degraded in terms of its status of still having some green belt in this concrete jungle being made abject by the day? Isn't that something you should ask questions on? I mean, these are the things we need to think through. I don't want to take too long, therefore I want to focus on the larger points, and I'll probably wrap up very soon. If you look at all of us sitting here in Mumbai, I know people who live and use the AC in the winter of Mumbai. Mumbai doesn't really have a winter, but yes, the weather does cool down a bit. But people use the AC 24, not 24, but all through the evening and night for 365 days a year. You know why? Not just because it's too hot or sweltering outside, because I need to keep the mosquito out, and more important, I can't bear the sound. So do you know what it takes? That electrical appliances and the use of air conditioners are probably one of the biggest reasons why the earth is getting hotter. And we are contributing to it so liberally. You and I are creating it because of our lifestyle. I know there has been a movement for removing plastic, and I believe it's received a positive response so far. But you know what? Lifestyle is, I'm telling you, a serious curse for the environment, like it or not. We are not willing to give up those small perks. And then you're asking for trouble. So I looked at the data, and I'm telling you why all of us in this room should be concerned, because we belong to this data. And this data can be debated, can be questioned. It's not too old, by the way. And the data says that 0.0% of Indians, the most richest Indians in this country, 0.01%, in terms of carbon emissions, are contributing more than 300 times what the poorest 40% do. You know what? When we talk of sustainability, creating jobs in an environment of such ecological stress, we are not doing anybody a favor. We are actually the biggest exploiters of this society. So we sit in our cars, we're going to run our ACs, we're going to go to fancy restaurants, and at the end of the day, we don't even know how much we are contributing to the heating up of this environment. You know, this miserable October heat that people complain about is going to get progressively worse. But we are only going to worry about it, you know what, when you're on a foreign holiday and you're thinking, what, you know, many years ago there was a tsunami. The seawater levels are going to rise. You read the latest report on climate change. But you also have a reality of a president of America, the great American dream, where Donald Trump believes climate change is nothing but a piece of wild imagination of some Hollywood scriptwriter. So we have humongous challenges, ladies and gentlemen. So where are we? India today, on the ecological footprint, is third after America and China. I hope I'm right on that one. And if you are, let us face the debate. We go and argue in all these forums on the per capita emission. Obviously, you are a huge population, the per capita drops. But shouldn't, as a country, we look at the aggregate that we do, because that is perhaps somewhere down the line the future of our entire society. If it's frankly going to be per capita, China and India can go keep polluting our environments, spoil the waters. I don't think anybody in India is still understanding the water crisis that's going to hit us. Please go to Cape Town and you'll figure it out. I've been there. It's already happening in Bangalore and Karnataka in a great way, and you're from Karnataka, you will know better. It's going to hit us here. And it's going to hit you at a time when you won't have any solutions for a long time to come. Please save this. And truth be said, that's the problem we have. Because with great ideas, I believe they should, if they don't get translated into effective action, then I think it's a waste of time. And the only way they will change is when accountability is truly, brutally implemented. When society rises in anger and says, I will not let you do this. Because you know what? Your children will suffer too. But we aren't thinking about these issues at all. And I'm therefore going to tell you this, that, they say that if you have a will, there is a way. I don't think that growth and equity are necessarily incompatible. It's hard, but you can do it. I started by posing you a question. That is sustainability with profitability by a corporate entity realizable? I don't think so, prima facie, no. But is it possible? Yeah. If you want to, yes. There are companies that are truly doing something about it. Are they doing enough? I'm not so sure. So I think the fundamental point here is that if you look at India's growth between 2004 to 16, which includes two governments, but principally has a big stretch here, you grew at 8.2% GDP per year. So that probably addressed some of the problems. You lifted 276 million people out of poverty. So poverty did get addressed, which means maybe there was some degree of job creation. But you did perhaps not score in every parameter. And I think therein lies the story. And the story lies here in this room. That you have some brilliant thinkers who are so committed to environment. You have heard two very senior bureaucrats with a passion for the things they do for greening. And I think amongst the audience, I can see Mr. Sehgal, I'm a great admirer of his, and other people who I think bring a lot to the table. But truth be said, that first you need to embrace the problems you face. And I think if you keep living in denial, I think we are fooling ourselves. If your obstacle is the government, do something about it. If your insurmountable problem is the politics, challenge it. If it's lack of education or awareness to create a mobilization, work on it. But trust me, you will succeed only when you know what the problems are. Because how are we going to find the solutions if we don't pose what the questions are? We're talking about jobs, my last line. You cannot create jobs if you don't understand what it means in an age of drones, artificial intelligence, big data, and the impact of automation and robots. You got to know that part of the story. No company listed in the Bombay Stock Exchange where we are is thinking about you and me first. They're thinking about the guy who holds those share certificates, or what you now call as DMAT or whatever. He's looking at that foreign portfolio investor sitting in a New York office, working with an FII, and saying, well, I put so much money into you, what are you going to give me as a return? He's looking at private equity, he's looking at venture capital. You come in pretty much low in the category. And many people will probably pursue you and support your green revolution as and when they have satisfied their shareholders first. Therefore, you will have a Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation. But that will happen when Microsoft has captured the entire operating system market. But I don't take away from the good work still being done. So my last line is personal. My daughter has just gone for an MBA. And she says, Dad, every friend of mine after the MBA wants to work and live abroad. But I want to come back to this country. Because it's a beautiful country for all the madness it has. Because what's life worth living if you don't make a change? And some of us are very fortunate that we have a head start, that we don't necessarily have to worry about where the food ration comes from tomorrow. And if some of us in this room or all of us in this room are blessed and we are not doing anything about it, then God help us and God help the future generation. Let's not fail them, ladies and gentlemen. I think you and I can do it together. Thank you very much.